He used to laugh and call me just a housewife. Now, he wires me $7,000 a month just to make sure I never open my mouth. I was 24 when I married Alex. He was 34, confident, charismatic, and already climbing the corporate ladder. I met him at an art gallery opening where he stood in front of a Rothko like he understood it. He didn't, but he made me laugh, and that felt rare enough to hold on to. His eyes lingered too long. His words always felt just on the edge of a performance, but I told myself it was charm, and charm at 24 can feel like security. My name is Leah. Back then, I was Leah Holloway. I just finished my degree in interior design, and I was juggling a handful of freelance gigs in downtown Chicago. I was full of ideas, scrappy, and proud of how far I'd come without anyone's help. I wasn't looking for a savior, but Alex made dependence feel like luxury. From the beginning, he made it clear what kind of life he wanted: stability, order, and a woman who could make a house feel like a home. He loved using that phrase, like it came from some mid-century magazine ad. I laughed it off the first few times. Then I started to absorb it. When he proposed, he said, "You won't need to worry about a thing." It sounded like a promise, and I wanted to believe him. We bought a 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburb just outside Oak Park. I threw myself into transforming it, refinishing furniture, sourcing vintage light fixtures, painting every wall by hand. It became a place that looked like something out of a magazine. Friends joked it was Pinterest perfect. Alex would smile proudly when they said that and tell them, "She's the brains behind the beauty." It sounded like a compliment, but over time, it started to feel like a cage. I left my work behind gradually. First, it was just for the move. Then, it was until we settle in. And then suddenly, I was waking up in a house I'd made beautiful, living a life I hadn't really chosen. At first, I filled the days with projects: gardening, renovating the guest room, making elaborate meals. I convinced myself I was building a foundation, that this was just a chapter, that we were a team. But Alex didn't see it that way. He handled the finances. "For simplicity," he said. He put the house in his name. "For the mortgage rate," he claimed. He praised me at dinners and parties, but rarely listened to anything I said in private. Once, when I mentioned wanting to restart a part-time design consultancy, he looked at me and said, "That's cute, Leah, but we don't need your Etsy money." That moment lodged in my ribs like a splinter, not big enough to scream, but impossible to ignore. Still, I told myself to be patient, to be grateful. After all, he wasn't cruel, he wasn't violent, he just dismissed me, quietly, regularly, until I started dismissing myself. The turning point came one night at a cocktail party he hosted for his firm. I'd spent 3 days preparing everything: the menu, the lighting, the playlist. I made the house feel warm and polished, like us, like a unit. When one of his colleagues asked what I did, Alex jumped in before I could answer. "She's just a housewife," he said, laughing, clinking his glass. "Just a housewife." The room chuckled. I froze. He didn't even look at me. That moment didn't end my marriage, but it marked the beginning of the end. After that party, something in me shifted, quietly but permanently. I didn't say anything that night. I smiled, I passed the hors d'oeuvres, I did what was expected. But when I lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling, I replayed that laugh over and over, that smug, offhand laugh. She's just a housewife, not my wife, not the woman who made this night possible, not Leah, just. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I'd been trained not to see. Little humiliations I used to brush off now landed differently. The way he waved me off when I spoke about news or books. The way he introduced me by my first name only, never mentioning we were married, as if I were a distant acquaintance. The way he spoke to the waiter with more respect than he spoke to me. When I brought up that night, gently, diplomatically, he rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, Leah. It was a joke. Don't be dramatic." Dramatic, sensitive, overthinking. He had a word for every discomfort I dared express, and every word was a wall. But the deeper issue was the control. I realized how little agency I actually had: no access to joint accounts, no cards in my name. I had stopped asking about money long ago because every question was met with sighs or silence. He'd wave a hand and say, "I've got it covered." When I asked to be added to the house title, he said, "Why complicate things? It's not like we're getting divorced." When I asked if we could file taxes jointly this year, he told me, "You don't earn income. There's no point." I wasn't even listed as an emergency contact at his office. I found that out when a junior associate called the house looking for him and asked, "Are you the assistant?" I laughed politely, then I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes. I began to feel like I was vanishing, like I had been erased from every official record of my own life. My only identity was through him. And even that, he didn't take seriously. But I still didn't leave. Not yet. Part of me was afraid, not of him, but of the world outside him. I had no savings, no job history for 5 years, no credit in my name. I'd let him convince me that I didn't need those things, that love would take care of me. I see now how easy it is to fall into that trap, especially when the trap is gilded and lined with flowers. So instead of confronting him again, I started to observe. I started to listen more closely to his calls in the other room, to the names he mentioned, the sudden pauses in conversation when I entered, to the way he started taking late meetings again, just like he used to during the first year of our marriage. My instinct told me something was wrong, but I didn't act on it. Not yet, because I was no longer looking to fix the marriage. I was starting to look for the truth. And this time, I would not be dismissed. It started with an email. The subject line was simple: "Are you still with Alex?" No greeting, no name, just a single question. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes before opening it. Inside was a screenshot of Alex's Bumble profile. Freshly updated, clear photo, his real name, and under occupation, managing partner, no kids, just got out of a long thing. There was also a short message. "I thought you should know. I found your address in the background of a photo. If I'm wrong, I apologize." I read it 3 times. At first, I felt cold, then burning hot, then number. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I just sat on the kitchen stool and stared at the refrigerator, which I had decoupaged with floral patterns 2 summers ago, back when I believed home was safety. That night, I said nothing. I cooked dinner, as usual. He made a joke about work, kissed the top of my head, and poured himself a drink. I watched him from across the room, the ease, the arrogance, the total absence of fear. He had no idea I knew. That was the last night I played house. The next morning, I found a private investigator online. Her name was Carla, sharp, discreet, and thorough. I told her everything. She didn't flinch. "Give me 3 weeks," she said, "and don't let him suspect a thing." For the next 21 days, I played my role with precision. I smiled when he walked in the door. I laughed at his bad jokes. I kept dinner on the table at 7, but beneath the surface, something colder and more calculating had awakened. Carla sent me her findings in waves. First, a confirmation. Yes, the Bumble profile was active, updated weekly. He had 2 phones, the second one hidden in his car. Second, a woman. Her name was Rachel, 27, worked in real estate. Carla had seen them together twice at a boutique hotel in the city, once at a rooftop bar, once outside a leasing office, but the third discovery, that was the real break. Alex owned a property I'd never heard of, a condo in his name only, purchased 3 months after our wedding. All utilities were routed through a business entity I didn't recognize, a shell company, Carla explained. That was the moment the panic wore off and something else took its place: clarity. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he had been hiding assets, building a private life while erasing me from our shared one. I confronted him once, softly, carefully. I said I'd seen a charge on the statement for a boutique hotel. He paused, then laughed. "Must have been a work thing," he said. "You're always looking for a reason to be mad." That sentence sealed it for me. He had no fear, no guilt, no hesitation, but I had proof. I didn't tell him I'd hired someone. I didn't tell him what I knew. Instead, I began quietly copying every file I could find: tax returns, business emails, even photos from his cloud account. I knew the password. He used the same one for everything. Arrogance made him predictable. I stored it all on a flash drive, labeled it pumpkin recipes, hid it in the spice cabinet behind the cinnamon he never touched. Then I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. He was a quiet man in his 60s named James. He looked over the documents with an expression that never changed: calm, focused, slightly disapproving. When he finished, he folded his hands and said, "Leah, if even half of this is accurate, you're looking at a major financial settlement." I nodded. He leaned in slightly. "But I need you to be quiet. Let him think nothing's changed. The more relaxed he is, the sloppier he gets." I took that advice to heart. For the next 2 months, I watched Alex perform his little charade: work trips, late meetings, forced affection. I responded with measured warmth, never tipping my hand. I let him lie to my face, knowing I held the truth in my pocket. In those days, I stopped thinking of myself as a wife. I was something else now, an architect of consequences. There's a particular stillness that comes before a storm, not fear, not doubt, just focus. That's where I lived for the next 8 weeks. Every morning after Alex left for work, I became someone else. I wasn't Leah the housewife anymore. I was Leah the archivist, the tactician, the woman documenting her own resurrection. I started scanning every legal document he had stored in our home office: contracts, property deeds, tax statements. I even found an old prenup draft. It had been heavily edited. I remembered signing something vague and friendly before we married, but this one had clauses I hadn't been told about. A clause about hidden assets, a clause about infidelity, a clause that, if violated, would automatically entitle the spouse to 40% of the offending party's business holdings. James, my lawyer, nearly dropped his coffee when he saw it. "Who wrote this?" he asked. "His former attorney," I said. "I think Alex had it rewritten later, but I signed this version." "Well then," James said, setting the papers down, "he's done." I began building a timeline: names, dates, transactions. Carla provided surveillance photos. I kept a journal: clean, detailed, unemotional. Every line designed for court. But beyond the legal prep, I was preparing myself emotionally, psychologically, for the silence, for the waiting. I stopped asking questions. I stopped initiating anything, and still, he didn't notice. I took off my wedding ring one night after he fell asleep, left it on the nightstand next to the lamp. It stayed there for 4 days. He never said a word. Every day, he made it easier to leave, and still, I played my part. He had no idea I was building a new life while quietly dismantling the one he thought he controlled. I met with James every Tuesday. We worked in silence, occasionally punctuated by legal advice and quiet admiration. "You're very thorough," he said once. I told him it was the only power I had left. By the 6th week, we had enough to file, enough to not only dissolve the marriage, but to drag his business and his secrets into the open, enough to cost him everything. But that wasn't the part that mattered to me most. It was this: that I had reclaimed my name, that I wasn't just a dependent or a silent partner or a woman who got taken care of. I had proof, I had leverage, and I had time. I waited for the right moment, and then one morning, it came. Alex was flying to San Diego for a conference. I knew Rachel would be there. Carla had already confirmed it. He kissed me goodbye without making eye contact, muttered something about dinner next week, and left his coffee half drunk on the counter. He didn't notice I wasn't wearing my ring. He didn't notice the change in my eyes. He didn't even notice that I didn't say, "I love you." That was the last time I saw him as my husband. I closed the door behind him, stood in the foyer for exactly 1 minute, and then picked up the phone. "James," I said, "it's time." That morning felt surgical. Every move had already been rehearsed in my mind for weeks. I was calm, precise, focused. While his plane taxied down the runway, I walked into the bank and froze our joint accounts. I had timed it to the hour, after takeoff, before landing. By the time his flight touched down in California, the man who handled everything would discover that he suddenly handled nothing. Next, I contacted the locksmith. The locks on the front door, garage, and back patio were changed within the hour. His key, the one that dangled from his smug little Porsche fob, was now worthless. Then came the papers. James had them delivered to his hotel that evening. Divorce filing, itemized evidence index, demand for full financial disclosure, and a printed photo of the prenup clause he never expected me to find. He called me at midnight. I didn't answer. The next morning, the texts started. "What the hell is this? Are you out of your mind? Let's be adults here. This is going to get ugly if you keep acting irrational." I didn't respond to any of it. Silence had become my sharpest weapon. He returned 2 days later to find his clothes packed, his accounts frozen, and his office computer missing. I'd taken it to James for a full data transfer. Nothing illegal, just backup, insurance. He pounded on the front door for 20 minutes. I watched from the upstairs window, heart steady. He didn't shout. He didn't beg. He just looked confused, genuinely confused, like he couldn't fathom how the woman who folded his socks and took his dry cleaning suddenly held his future in her palm. The next few weeks blurred into legal chess. He tried to bluster his way through negotiations, bringing in a high-priced attorney, trying to intimidate James. Didn't work. James presented the infidelity evidence, the secondary property, the financial concealment, the prenup violation. Alex folded faster than I expected. He asked to settle, quietly, out of court. I said yes, but I had conditions. I wanted 40% of his business equity liquidated. I wanted the house, now solely in my name, and I wanted monthly payments, not alimony, a silence retainer. I told him, calmly, that I wouldn't speak publicly. I wouldn't expose his affairs or his shell companies, but if he ever missed a payment, I would consider our arrangement void. He signed. The total package was worth nearly 7 figures. Afterward, he asked to speak with me privately. I agreed on the condition it be recorded. He looked at me across the conference room table and said, "You don't have to do this. You're not this kind of woman." I smiled. You never knew what kind of woman I was. That was the last time we spoke. I walked out of that office wearing the same coat I'd worn the day we met, but this time, I wasn't the one being chosen. I was the one choosing the ending. In the months that followed, I didn't speak his name. I didn't need to. His payments arrived on time, like clockwork. The same man who once refused to add my name to a bank card now wired me monthly silence checks labeled consulting services. The irony wasn't lost on me. With the settlement, I bought a small modern house in the city. 2 bedrooms, exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows. It wasn't the biggest house I'd ever lived in, but for the first time, it was mine. No permission needed, no co-signature, just mine. I used the rest of the money to restart my design business, properly this time. I hired a small team, built a portfolio, and began taking on clients who respected the work, not just the results. By the end of the first year, I was running at a profit. People asked about the divorce. I offered a polite smile and said, it wasn't working. We're in a better place now. That was true, in its own way. I never mentioned the cheating, the manipulation, the business dealings, not because I wanted to protect him, but because my silence was worth more than my fury. There's a certain power in holding a story and choosing not to tell it. It unsettled him more than any public exposure ever could. I knew that every time his phone buzzed with my invoice, he'd wonder what I might do next. I became the quiet reminder in his ledger, a monthly whisper that said, "You misjudged me." I still see Rachel sometimes on social media. They didn't last. Of course they didn't. He's remarried now to someone younger. She posts photos of their vacations, their renovations, their shiny new kitchen. I don't feel jealous. I feel detached because I know what it cost him to keep that image intact. And I know he'll never admit how close he came to losing everything. But I don't need an apology or an acknowledgement or revenge in the dramatic, movie satisfying way. This was better. This was elegant. He once called me just a housewife. Now he pays me to stay quiet. And I've never been louder in my own life. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or silenced, know this. You don't have to scream to be heard. Share this story if you've ever rebuilt yourself in silence. And subscribe for more real stories where quiet strength speaks the loudest.